I think there are three elements that will define how useful an AI agent can be. Number one, can it interact with your tools and therefore work on your behalf? So in our context of building business applications, our agents need access to your Gmail, your Slack, your CRM, because if they can't read data from those and write emails for you, like how can they possibly work on your behalf? So number two, how does the AI agent communicate to me the plan? What's it gonna do? What are the steps it's gonna follow? How do I kind of correct or give feedback? And then number three, what is the human in the loop? The way I see the world evolving is, I think there are two kind of types of roles that won't exist anymore, and one type of role which will become much more prominent. I think we're gonna have smaller companies, first of all. So like at Google, when I was there were 200,000 people.
Like when you imagine a Google shrinking down, what does that actually look like? Is it just like the middle gets sucked out, or is it the whole thing's been re-engineered completely?
I can't comment so much on how an existing company would, quote, shrink down. What I can say is how I'm thinking about building our business and how I'm thinking about its evolution going forward, and how different that is from how I would have thought about it just 2 years ago.
Guest today has helped over 1 billion users to use AI as an integral part of their email after he sold his first AI startup to Google. Now he builds the future of work automation at Relay.app. Today we're joined by Jacob Bank. Jacob, really great to see you, man.
Hey, Rob. Great to talk to you.
Jacob, I want to start with something that's all about today. One of the things I love about Relay is you keep a human in the loop in the way that you automate things. And I think this says something about how people want AI to be part of their life. Why do you think having a human in the loop is really important?
I think there's a few elements of human in the loop workflows that are important in different ways. So first, people want to feel confident that the AI is going to approach the task in the same way that we would. So AI agents are all the rage these days. People may have seen the latest, operator release from OpenAI, which is basically a browser-based agent that can do a bunch of things for you. It can book reservations on OpenTable. It can book hotels for you, but you kind of let it go and it'll do stuff. And so I think people really want to see how the AI is going to plan its task. First, I'm going to go to OpenTable. I'm going to check to see if there's a table at 7 p.m. for 2 people. If there is, I'm going to book it. If there's not, I'll try 7:30. And if not, I'll come back and ask you a question. That's one element of human loop. People feel confident that the AI is going to do roughly the right stuff. And the second really important part of human in the loop is to guide the AI along the way. So for example, in that OpenTable example, let's say there are no tables available between 6 and 8 p.m., which is when it knows I like to eat dinner. Then you could have a human in the loop step, which is like to ask the user, like, okay, do you want to take the 8:30 table or do you want to try a different day? And that's a bit of a caricatured example, but in our domain, we focus on business to business use cases, especially for small businesses and solopreneurs. So let's say you want to have a workflow that every time a new blog post is published on an interesting blog that you follow, you want to create a reaction post on LinkedIn to say, hey, just read this blog post, found this point, and this point really interesting and resonant. You might want to first see, okay, how is the AI going to take that blog post and turn it into a LinkedIn post in my voice? Maybe it'll read the blog post carefully. It'll get the images from it. It'll kind of show me the plan. This is how I'm going to do it. And at the very end, it'll say like, here's the LinkedIn post I wrote. Do you want to change it? And in my experience in these sort of content generation tasks, AI is amazing. It gets it like 80 to 90% right, but I can't think of a single instance where I've been able to take the output of an AI and directly post it on LinkedIn. So I think as excited as I am about the future of AI tooling and how it's going to help us all be more productive, I don't think we're all going to get fired anytime soon. I still think we all have like very useful judgment and guidance. And I'm sure in this conversation, we'll talk a lot more about where the world is going and how we can all best position ourselves to take advantage of it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm a brand owner. I've run some pretty big brands and I've done a lot of thought leadership. And, I've tried a bunch of automations just on this podcast to see how much I can make my life easier. And I've probably invested a lot of time in building things that get me 80% of the way there that I probably could prompt in myself. And I think that human in the loop step's really, really fundamental, because when we think about where the workforce is going to, I don't think it is going to be a bunch of cyborg model automations that are just going to take job by job out one by one. This kind of centaur model of working with the technology has always been a repeatable way in which we use technology. And so I think the human in the loop step is really good, because I'm super tall and I don't want to go to an 8:30 appointment if the table's small. How can it understand my context? right? So like there are
Right.
natural limitations. And so thinking of those limitations, like where does the value of AI, where's the box stop? So obviously it can't interact with the real world. It knows something about me, but not a lot. Like, how do you think about that?
So first, I think there are three elements that will define how useful an AI agent can be. Number one, can it interact with your tools and therefore work on your behalf? So in our context of building business applications, we need access, our agents need access to your Gmail, your Slack, your CRM, because if they can't read data from those and write emails for you, like how can they possibly work on your behalf? So there's a limitation of like what tools the AI has the ability to access. And so right now we're talking just in the digital world. Eventually you can have like humanoid robots that can do your laundry and stuff. But in the digital world, it's really a question of like what platforms are available for the AI agent to work with, or can the AI agent kind of take over your browser and do things? That's number one. Number two is this point about how does the AI agent communicate to me the plan? What's it going to do? What are the steps it's going to follow? How do I kind of correct or give feedback? And then number three, what is the human in the loop step? And the mental model I would use is a junior employee. That seems to work pretty well, which is like a junior employee that you give guidance to, you give them access to tools, you give them a few examples of what the output should look like. The first few they come up with aren't great, but then they get there. That's the mental model I think people should have. And so the way I see the world evolving is there are two kind of types of roles that won't exist anymore, and one type of role which will become much more prominent. So I think we're going to have smaller companies, first of all. So like at Google, when I was there were 200,000 people. And by the end of my time there, I was, leading a 1,000-person organization. My whole job was politicking. And I don't know that those jobs are going to exist quite as much anymore because organizations are just going to be smaller. So if your entire job is coordinating what thousands of people do and no companies are thousands of people, like that may not be as relevant. The second is if you're a very junior execution-oriented employee, that won't exist anymore. So if your only job is to take Rob's draft, like Rob's prompt of a blog post and turn it into a full blog post, that won't exist anymore. But I think what we're all going to be is what I call like a player coach in the middle, where you have to be strategic enough and autonomous enough to know here's what we're trying to accomplish with this blog post. Here's how it fits into our overall go-to-market strategy. Here's the topic, and here are some of the elements we want to hit. And then you also have to be close enough to the craft to say, that's a good blog post. Or no, I need to edit these 3 lines to make this conclusion more salient. And so this is why I'm super excited, because I don't know, I've talked to thousands of people in my career and everyone likes being a player coach. Like I've never met someone who's like, I love it when people tell me exactly what prompts to write and I just do the detailed editing on the blog post. Never met anyone who enjoys that. I've also not met many people who enjoy 100% politicking because they're disconnected from the actual work. People will do it and there's high status and compensation and whatever, but like most of the people I talk to who are in those sorts of positions were like, I wish I could still get closer to the product or closer to the content or closer to the customer. And so I think it's pretty exciting to live in a world where we all get to be the player coach, which is like we have enough strategic insight and leverage that we can do big things, but we're still close enough to the work that we feel connected to. And that's what my job is like right now, honestly. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, that reminds me of just last week I was talking to a marketing agency and they needed a statement of work. And there was no point me spending 2 hours crafting a statement of work when I've got a template. I could spin one out pretty quickly. And the statement of work was probably good enough as though it was written by a very junior account manager. But what got it to being comfortable to put in front of a consulting firm was like knowing what the brand voice needed to be and what were we trying to validate, and things that are just like you can try and prompt everything at once, but it's not possible to get to that point of accuracy.
Yeah, and what I've found with content creation examples like this, where your voice is so important and your emphasis is so important, no amount of prompting is going to get you there. Because you can't say like, how would you describe your voice in a prompt? Like you can't do it. You can get pretty far with examples because models are pretty good at saying, well, here's the last 20 statements of work you've done for all these different agencies, and here's how this agency is a little bit different, so you might want to emphasize these points. And again, it'll get you pretty close, but we still need your judgment to take it all the way there.
Yeah. I've put a bunch of my writing examples into Claude.
Yeah.
It gives me the persona of reflective entrepreneur. And it's almost a parody of myself.
It's funny, like every single time, no matter how many examples I give, whenever Claude produces some writing, I'm just like, tone that down a little bit. Because, it'll use these big, revolutionizing trailblazer, and that's just not how I talk. I'm a much more practical, like down to earth communicator, and it doesn't seem to be able to learn that.
One of the things you described before was kind of obliquely was just about the communication cost of scaling a business. You know, the kind of rubric that our investors used to say to us is like, 2 people is one-to-one communication. 3 people, now there's 3 flows. And it just goes up really, really, really fast. And so, like, when you imagine a Google shrinking down, what does that actually look like? Is it just like the middle gets sucked out? Or is it the whole thing's been re-engineered completely in order to take advantage of some of these benefits?
Can't comment so much on how an existing company would, quote, shrink down. That's a difficult kind of change management problem. What I can say is how I'm thinking about building our business, and how I'm thinking about its evolution going forward, and how different that is from how I would have thought about it just 2 years ago. So we're building a software startup. It's a product-led, self-serve product, so we don't need a massive sales or implementation or customer success team. And a few years ago, the way this would have worked was the founders or a small group of early employees build the first version. That gets you to like a seed round. Maybe you're 4 or 5 people. Then you get up some traction. You raise a Series A round. By that point, you're maybe going from 10 to 20 people, maybe 30 people. Then your Series B takes you from 30 to 100. Then your Series C takes you from 100 to 250. And sort of each funding milestone is doubling or tripling the team. And that is not how I'm thinking about building our business. So we currently have 5 engineers, 2 designers, a product person, and myself. And though my background is in product and technology, I'm doing go-to-market at this company, which is support, marketing, sales, though we're mostly self-serve, so sales is less relevant. And there are 7 times in the past year where we considered hiring a marketer. And in some cases, we did contract engagements. In some cases, I just tried to do it myself. And in pretty much all cases, we found me plus AI was able to accomplish what we needed. I'm not saying this will be true forever, but for example, I now auto-generate blog posts on a variety of topics. I auto-generate LinkedIn posts on a variety of topics. What I was working on just before this meeting is auto-generating tutorial videos, using a digital avatar and automatic screen recording. So like I can produce a huge amount of content, just me augmented by AI tooling. And so if I think about the evolution of our company, which maybe a couple of years ago, we'd have to be 20 people already now. It's a few very senior engineers, a couple of very senior designers, and me doing go-to-market augmented by all these different AI agents. And so I can see a world where we grow to 12 and then 15 and 20. I will need someone to help me with content. I will need someone to do partnerships. I will need someone to manage our community, especially because that's a very human thing where you want to build connection and relationships. So I can see how we get to 20. I don't see why we would need to be 100 or 200. Like eventually when you do enterprise sales, and if you're doing client relationships, like big clients will expect a person to talk to who is dedicated to their account. And so you'll need to scale in that regard. But I think that's the shape of businesses going forward. It'll be a smaller number of more senior, empowered, I'll say. They don't necessarily have to be senior. Empowered autonomous employees who use a bunch of AI to help give them leverage. I do think it does create legitimate challenges for new grads who are entering the workforce now, because companies like mine are saying like, all I need is 1 senior person and then I'll have AI to be the 5 junior people. And so I haven't yet fully figured out what the landscape is going to look like for junior people looking for jobs. But the cool thing is like, there is no barrier to entry to a 17-year-old creating their own company now. Absolutely no barrier to entry. You see it on Twitter, these like App Store millionaires who are still in high school. Like, and so I think the traditional career path where it's like, you have to go in training in a firm where more senior people treat you poorly and show you the ropes. Like, I don't know if that's what career paths are going to look like anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading a report on the weekend. Stanford MBAs and Harvard MBAs are underemployed this year, considerably compared to previous years. And I think it's that you're touching upon the same thing, which is, can I get an MBA that is doing a full-time research work? Yes, I can, but I also have to figure out how to lose some of my own focus to upskill them, probably on a temporary rotation. And so therefore, like, the trade-off is not quite what it used to be.
Yeah, and now you can just do stuff. Like,
Yeah,
you don't need to have a brand associated with you. You don't need someone to train you. Let's say you have an idea, which is you want to build a little software product that helps digital nomads find schools for their kids in different countries. I bet you could make an end-to-end prototype of that product in a day by yourself, using a tool like ours on the back end, or using a tool like Lovable or Bolt or V0 to create the front end, or even just having a simple form builder, which is like, hey, put in what country you want to live in and a little bit about your family, and we'll come up with a detailed document explaining everything you need to do to immigrate to Portugal and go to schools there or whatever. You could just do that. And then how do you market it? That's kind of an interesting story. That's where you have to figure out what is the way that you can find your audience and build resonance, whether it's with ads or content marketing or thought leadership or network or whatever. But I think, I don't know, at least 90% of what I was taught to, quote, be an executive at Google is like increasingly totally irrelevant.
Yeah. I want to use Google as an example of startups versus corporate experience.
Yeah.
Because like a lot of our audience are maybe increasingly disengaging senior executives in corporate. So like, tell us about the story of how your company got acquired by, like what it was doing, how it got acquired by Google, and then what you loved about being in a big corporate that you didn't have in being a startup. And then I want to do the same again as to why you jumped out of Google to do it again.
So we were acquired in 2015, and the premise of the acquisition was that we were going to bring AI-powered smarts to Gmail and Google Calendar. Initially, I was responsible for a small team, which is basically the group that came in via the acquisition. And then relatively quickly, within 2 years, I was responsible for all of Gmail. And then eventually I had other products kind of added into my purview from there. And the coolest thing about working at a big company, and this is going to sound so silly, is like you go into a coffee shop and everyone is looking at Gmail and you're like, oh, cool, that's my thing.
I did that one.
Like, and it's funny because like you look at the dashboards and you see the billion users and you see the hundreds of billions of emails sent and received, and you have a hard time sort of wrapping your mind around that. But then you go to a coffee shop and you see 10 people using it and you're like, oh, wow, people are using Gmail. That's cool. And I really do think I learned a lot about what it takes to operate a business at scale. It has to work on every single device, in every single market, in every single language, at every single price point. It has to scale from a student in India who's just gotten their first phone to the CEO of Verizon or Airbus. And so I really loved my time at Google because I felt like I was building something that a lot of people were using and were going to benefit from. And it was hard to do stuff, but it was hard for a good reason, because you can't just change the way 2 billion people run their work overnight. So big impact. And then just a lot of different elements of learning. I learned a lot about European regulation and data privacy laws. I learned a lot about how advertiser ecosystems work. I learned a lot about how you sell into a large company. And so for that, and to learn a business at scale, well, hopefully I'll get there with this startup, but like it takes a lot of time to get there. So that was an exciting experience. And I learned how to manage, I learned how to grow teams. So all of these things were kind of exciting and kept me, I really enjoyed it. I spent 6 years there. And then we can talk about why I decided to leave.
Yeah, and before we do, like you mentioned before, like you had 1,000 people in your pyramid, right? Going from like college to a startup, and then like I'm acquired because of my skills and the unique value that I can bring to this product. Like, how on earth did you figure out how to be a senior leader of that scale in that period of time?
I think the reason I grew relatively quickly within Google was because I had not picked up a lot of the bad corporate habits of more experienced people. For example, in a large corporation, people are always fighting for territory and fighting for scope. I want this project. You have this project. I want that project. That project gives me more budget, more people, more staff. And coming from a startup where everyone's incentives were so aligned and the company being successful, like I just didn't have that instinct to like ask for more projects. And so I would give away projects. I would help other people succeed in their projects. And it turns out that not actively trying to get more scope is what ended up giving me a bunch more scope. And the second was, I still had the mentality that you can just do stuff. Like, I think there was a set of people who, once you become an executive in a company, there's this expectation that's like, you won't actually do any real work anymore, but you'll have your people do your real work for me. There were a set of executives that would always have their admin assistant, their chief of staff, and their technical advisor, like in all of their meetings. And they would never actually write a document or create a slide deck or write an email or talk to an individual engineer because they felt like the organization should do that. And one of the reasons I was relatively successful is I would just talk to the actual engineers that were building the thing. And so I can vividly remember being in some of these like big corporate strategy planning sessions where you're looking at the spreadsheet of the progress across all your projects and someone would say like, oh yeah, that project is green. It's on track. It's going to land next week. And I'd be like, I talked to the engineer working on that yesterday and they have not started yet. I don't know how that data like got up the chain to show that box in that spreadsheet, but like that's not happening. And so if we care about it and want it to happen, here's the 3 people we need to talk to and how we change their priorities around. And if we don't want it to happen, then let's update the plan to acknowledge the fact that it's not going to happen. And so those were the big 2. I really kept my intentions pure in like optimizing for what was going to make the company successful, not myself successful. And the second was staying close to the work. Like, who is actually writing the code that will be this feature? And are they doing it? And what do they need? What do they need to do it more successfully? And what they need to do to do it more successfully is probably not some program manager sending them 5 more emails asking them for a status update. That's not going to help them do the thing faster. They need something else. They need help with prioritizing. They need help from a designer, or whatever it might be. But man, I could feel over 6 years that those instincts were being beaten out of me, honestly. And that's when I realized I had to leave Google at the very end, where it was like, I felt disconnected from the work. I was like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on anymore.
Yeah, I remember when my last business raised a Series A, we started scaling and like just after I'd closed my seed round, the second board meeting, they said, okay, you need to go raise a Series A. So I spent like a year just fundraising with about 2 months in the middle, thinking I had a moment to take a breath. I took a holiday, had to deal with some drama, and then like suddenly I'm back out fundraising again. But like that disconnection from the work, I didn't build a company to just spend all of my time convincing investors to keep it alive. I built a company to build cool shit. So I can imagine it must be really satisfying to go back out of Google and into Relay. How did you figure out what the thing was?
Painfully. We wandered in the desert with no paying customers for about 2.5 years, which is not an experience I recommend to everyone, but it was right for us because I'm a second-time entrepreneur. I wanted this to be the last job I ever have. Like, I am really committed to this being the thing for me. Life's work, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't want to sound all corny about that, but like, I want this to be a really successful, lasting company that I want to spend at least 10 years working on. And so I didn't want to stumble into the wrong thing. Really, it was 1.5 years before we were exploring wildly different products. We built an automated to-do list. We built an employee onboarding program. We built a stand-up tool. We built a knowledge base. We built a bunch of stuff. Any of those, I think, could have been successful products and could have been successful business. Like, none of them were stupid ideas. If they were totally stupid ideas, we wouldn't have tried them. But I had these, for each one of them, I had this like late night realization where it's like, I don't want to work on this for the next 10 years. And either because I didn't think I was the right person to solve that problem. So the product that we built in our wandering that was actually the best was an employee onboarding product. And it was pretty good. It like helped coordinate across HR and the hiring manager and IT, all the steps that needed to happen in the onboarding. It used some AI smarts to pull in the right information. It was a good product. And our first couple of, kind of beta customers who weren't yet paying us, but they really liked it. And I just realized I am not the right person to build an HR tech company. Like someone else should build that. Like, what do I know about onboarding or HR tech? And maybe I could learn, but it wasn't me. So eventually we got to the idea where like, I felt like, yes, this is founder market fit in this is a product I want to build. I like to build and I think I can do well. And this is a go-to-market motion that I think suits me and my personality and what I'm good at. And so that wandering was painful for many members of the team who were just like, okay, like, what's the thing? Like, we all quit our high paying jobs to do this thing with you. Are we ever going to get any users and customers? But now that we've sort of hit early product market fit in a market that I and the team are super excited about, and then we see a huge amount of growth potential, like, I'm glad we took our time, because I see so many companies that are in such a rush to get their first customer that they end up working on the wrong thing. Now, we had the luxury of having VC funding from the very beginning, largely based on my track record from my previous company. And that gave us space to basically explore for 2 years, which I know isn't an extreme luxury that maybe a bootstrapper wouldn't have. But even if you don't have 2 years to full-time explore, there are ways that you can give yourself space to validate what you're doing before you feel like you're on the treadmill of needing to grow revenue, 20% month over month.
Yeah, because I tell you what, it's much easier to spend time out in the wilderness trying to figure out what to do than it is to pivot something that people are already emotionally attached to. Because I had a business, we had a great product, people liked it. It was vitamins, not medicine. Yeah. And the revenue model post interest rates was just not scalable. So like, I then had to do a massive pivot.
And that's almost even worse than starting from scratch at that point.
Pretty much, because I'd 5x my valuation in a 6-month period because I'd been out raising soon after my seed. And then suddenly I had to basically go back to pre-seed stage, carry a massive valuation and let go of a bunch of people that I really liked. And like, it's funny, I think second-time entrepreneurs focus on getting the right problem rather than the right product and distribution. So I've been saying no a lot in the last 12 months since I sold my last company for that very reason, because if I'd started my first thing, I'd be in immigration court right now working for Donald Trump. And so it just shows how much things can change so quickly in certain markets.
Right. And, another thing I think a lot about in this new style of company building is it's just not as capital intensive as it was. And so for us, we've raised a relatively large first round of venture capital. Our default path will probably be to raise another round, and there's good reasons for us to raise another round, but we could be profitable if we had to. And so that also gives me a huge amount of comfort, which is we may still choose to take investment to grow faster. But if venture capital ceased to exist as a concept, we could still build a legitimate business doing what we're doing.
Yeah. Almost no one I know that has raised money pre-21 wants to do it again. And everybody is like, raise a seed round, focus on revenue.
The one and done. Now, if you're in a competitive market or you have high technological costs, like there are good reasons to raise another round of funding, especially if your ambition is to build a large public company eventually. But the dynamics around the decision have changed dramatically in the last 3 years.
It makes me think about what it means to win even as a company anymore. So in a world in which anybody can create technology with nothing more than smart LLM and the tooling that is available, no code or low code, what does it mean to win anymore?
I guess there's two questions. What does it mean to win, and what does it take to win? What does it mean to win? I think that's a very personal decision. For some people, that means building a public company and doing an IPO and having a multi-billion-dollar valuation. For others, that means having a long-term profitable business that they can run. For others, it might mean getting acquired by a larger company and folding their technology into a bigger organization. So I think what does it mean to win hasn't changed that much. It may take a different amount of resources or people or investment to get there, but I think people still can kind of think about what is the outcome they're shooting for, what are the set of successful outcomes. How do you win is a really interesting question where, for example, if the way you won before was by writing more blog posts than someone else, that's probably not going to be a winning strategy anymore. And so the way I think about it is I kind of break it down across go-to-market and product. And so for us, the go-to-market strategy that has worked is that I've become something of an educator in how people can use AI in their businesses. And we only kind of cracked that literally in the last 5 weeks, 5-6 weeks. And for me, what that means is LinkedIn posts that demonstrate what you can do with AI. It's live tutorial videos where I show you kind of detailed demonstrations of how to build something for yourself. And it includes build with me sessions where we spend an hour together. I mean, at scale, there's 100 people, but we spend an hour, building something together. And part of it part of that content maybe could be AI generated, but I think people actually do feel a connection to the others who are, to me, because I'm often personally helping them set up their AI workflows, or to others in the community who are answering their questions. So I think we're going to see a huge increase in people having affinity to the creator of the product, and the direct relationship with the community around the product. So like content and community, I think, will be a huge go-to-market moat in a different way. And then the product, you just have to figure out like what are things that are easy for AI to do, what are things that are hard for AI to do. And the thing that we're thinking about most is how can we build a product that meets people where they are in terms of their level of sophistication in working with AI and how much they trust delegating their work to AI. I think there's a lot of people who are either totally stuck in the legacy approach to their software, where it's like, AI, it's a fad, it's not a thing. We're going to keep building our, conference room booking software exactly like we built it in 1980. And then people are like, all software is irrelevant. Everything will be AI. I will just write, I want a conference room with these many people and it will do it all for me. And I think for a very long time, the right answer will be somewhere in between. For different problems and for different users, it's going to be different. But in that case, for example, you still probably want a web UI that like shows you a map of the conference rooms in the building and makes some suggestions of which one are available, and then maybe books the one it thinks is the best fit, but lets you change it if not. And so I think that's the way you win. You need a go-to-market strategy that somehow leverages personality, social connection, and community. And then you need a product that can gracefully take people from where they are now to where they get to be when they're a little bit more effective using AI.
Yeah, the reason I wanted to kind of hone in on this area is I think there was this old version of like, you need a lot of engineers, and so technology is your moat. And now we're in a world in which it's low code and no code. And so where does the moat go in a world in which I, as a former CEO who's not that technical, can like start creating my own automations? And so like, maybe the question is like, how big a business do you think somebody can build on top of a platform like Relay?
So Relay in its current form is not something you'd use to build your own SaaS product. It doesn't replace Lovable or Bolt or vZero or Replit Agent. You would use Relay as a tool for your internal operations. And you might use Relay if you are, for example, like an agency or a consultant that builds solutions on behalf of your clients. And so from what I've seen, if you think of basically any of the knowledge work that anyone and any junior person in your company does, whether it's a content marketer or a lifecycle marketer or a social media marketer or a PR person doing outreach to journalists, or a data analyst looking at trends in kind of your customer behavior, or customer success person creating personalized recommendations for how a customer should use the product better, it can pretty much do all of that. Now you still need senior people to come up with the strategy, to guide it, to set it up, to configure it. But I mean, if I just look at our own usage, if we did not have our own product, we would probably need to be a 15-person team instead of a 9-person team.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I'm observing it with my current consulting and the podcast work is I'm so much more capable of doing work with that communication cost, people management costs than I was before. But but we're in a world of services rather than trying to chase these.
Right. And I do believe, everyone talks about this mythical, when will there be a $1 billion company? I don't know about 1, but like 10 is definitely doable. Now there's an interesting question of like, there's going to be so many really effective 10-person companies. What does the market look like? Like, are we going to have a market where a Salesforce has such a strong share in CRM? Or will we end up with markets where there's many, many good alternatives for every product or every use case, which by the way, would be good for consumers probably. And so what we're doing, we're building an AI agent platform for every business to create agents that work for them. There are dozens of other companies doing similar things. I'm pretty confident that 10 years from now, there will be at least 20 companies in this space that are multi-billion-dollar public companies. I hope we're one of them. I think a few of our current alternatives look like they're doing really well, and maybe some of them. I'm sure there will be a few that don't exist yet. And so I'm not really worried about like, oh, is competitor X I always say alternative, not competitor. Like, am I worried that some competitor X is gonna race and win the whole market? I just don't think how that's going to work in our market. Like, if we build a great product for our customers and a great go-to-market motion where with our community and our content and our partnerships, our product naturally spreads from people who love it to other people who will love it, like, we'll build a successful business. And we'll see if that plays out.
Well, listen, I'm really bullish on the approach that you're taking. I wouldn't mind bringing it down a little bit. Our audience, they're getting bombarded with DeepSeek news. They know nothing about how to digest that. And I kind of think about AI and its benefits case right now as either like you're creating some personal effectiveness, maybe that gives you a little bit of space to do some team effectiveness, and then eventually some organizational efficiency, right? What are the use cases that your customers are building for right now?
There's a few different classes of use case. Maybe I'll go from like the easiest to start with to some of the more complex one. The easiest to start with is personal productivity. This is handling my email, handling my calendar, handling my to-do list. Like, every single listener, if they want to create a little AI agent that looks at their email, detects when they get an attachment, like with an invoice from a client, and then automatically uploads that to the right folder in their Google Drive for that client, you can build that in 10 minutes. Everyone can build that in 10 minutes. Same thing with calendar. Like, let's say you want to build a little agent that looks at my meetings for tomorrow and lets me know if any of my, the people I'm supposed to meet haven't RSVP'd yet. And I want to send them a note, just say, hey, Rob, we're on the calendar for tomorrow. Can you still make it? So personal productivity tends to be like a really easy place to get started. You don't need approval from anyone else. You don't need to fit into any team workflows, and you can just build these little kind of like nuggets of AI automation for yourself. We see a lot of people start there. Then second, we see a lot of people move to sort of like lightweight customer management and customer communication. For example, when a prospect fills out a form on your website and you want to do a little bit of research about them, like where are they based? How many employees do they have? What industry are they in? You can automate that with AI. If you have a meeting with them, you can automatically look at their LinkedIn profile and get a summary before the meeting. That's sort of number two, kind of basic customer research, customer communication. Number three is content and content creation. This could be look at all my customer calls from the last week and create a synthesized analysis, automatically create a LinkedIn post for me based on this blog post I read or wrote, automatically coach me on how well my LinkedIn content is performing and give me tips to do better. And that's where, in each of these categories, whether it's personal productivity or customer communication or content creation, there's sort of a spectrum from like first AI starts automating the very most basic, tedious and mundane things you did. Then AI starts automating things that are a little more advanced that require some judgment and take a bit of time. And then you get to the point where AI is doing things that maybe you couldn't have even done or wouldn't have done because it just wouldn't have made sense for your time. Like I can now actually, with AI, like this might not have been worth my time before, but I can create a very detailed report every week of all the new customers who have signed up for our platform. I can look at which plans they purchased, how long their sign-up conversion time was, what industries they're in, how many of them are personal accounts versus work accounts, what are the size of companies, where they geographically distributed, and this would have been a report that would have taken a junior analyst probably like a whole day to produce, and that wouldn't have been worth the time for us, but now AI can do it in 30 seconds at a cost of 5 cents. And so that's where it's not just automating something you were already doing, but it's like unlocking a new use case that you hadn't previously thought possible.
Mm. And for you, you're clearly using your own product. Like, when was this aha moment of where you got personal product market fit for finding some personal productivity thing?
I would say pretty early in our beta, a year and a half ago, I started having these quick wins. Like, customer signs up with a form on our website, add them to our CRM automatically. These kind of like basic, if this, then that automations. Then I would say the slightly more advanced stuff, like I'll give you an example that I built just today. I do these live build with me sessions once a week, and I send out an email to our newsletter, and if people want to attend, I ask them to just reply to the email and tell me if you can make it, and if you can't make it, tell me if you want the recording. And then I have a little AI agent that says, if they want to join, add them to the calendar event automatically and reply, say, thanks, excited to see you there. If they can't make it, say no worries, we'll put the recording up on YouTube and follow up with them after the thing. And wow, is that useful? It only took me 15 minutes to make. And I think I only felt that degree of value 6 months ago. Everything is moving. It's just moving so fast. It's moving so fast. Like there are things that I build today. So the thing I was working on right before this call, and I'll probably go back to right after this call, is I make tutorial videos. I make a couple of tutorial videos a week because that's a really valuable way for me to demonstrate use case in the product for people to get a step-by-step view of how to build their own AI agent. But it's really time consuming to make tutorial videos. I mess up the takes all the time. I have to re-record. The audio gets out of sync with the screen recording. I have to edit it. And what I was able to do over the weekend was I basically created the following using AI. When I want to record a tutorial video, I put in a 2-sentence prompt and I say, I want to make a tutorial video of how a freelancer could take their invoices and automatically upload them to the right folder for their client in Google Drive. It takes those 2 sentences, looks at all my past tutorial videos and writes a full script. My scripts are typically like 3 to 5 minutes. It writes a full script. It automatically creates the audio recording of that script. And then all I have to do is click around. And so that has taken it from probably like 2 hours end to end to create a tutorial video to like 15 minutes end to end. Now, the thing I'm working on next is I want that narration to be in my voice using voice cloning. I also want to have a little intro, which is like me talking to the camera, but AI generated with a digital twin. I also eventually want to have an AI agent that can do the clicking around for me. That's way further out. That's going to be like even OpenAI operator is not nearly capable of doing that yet today. It's an example where like what I'm doing today would not have been possible like 3 months ago. I've never experienced anything like it in my career where like you have to just be updating your mental model of what's possible. Like literally daily new things are possible. And so my recommendation for everyone is like, you gotta start playing with these tools. You gotta carve out an hour a day or a day a week to just think about what are all the things I did today and could AI have done that instead, and then find the best tool for it. It could be our tool, Relay. It could be ChatGPT or Claude. It could be a dedicated tool. Like I'm using, I'm checking out Caption and HeyGen for this audio and video use case. But it's pretty fun. It's exciting.
Riverside, which we record these podcasts in, now does voice cloning.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
And with the exception of my husband's name and my dog's name, it pretty much got my accent, made me a little more British than I am. I'm Australian.
Yeah.
But like, it blew my husband away because he told me if he got a voicemail like that, he'd probably just do whatever it said. It's
which is that's terrifying in a different way, and that's why.
Yeah.
And that's why I think I don't want to venture into safety and impersonation and those types of topics. I'm not an expert on that, but in the context of B2B marketing, I do think you need to figure out a way to maintain your authenticity and your personal connection. And so the way I do that is, yes, I have some of these auto-generated videos, but then I also do the live interactive build with me sessions where people know it's me, a real person, and we're talking about how to do the thing.
Yeah, and like you have an energy that is really engaging. It draws people in, and like I imagine it would be hard to get somebody that didn't just sound like you, but really behaved in the way that you do, because
that has been a limitation so far. It's like they can do the voice pretty well, but they don't have the same gestures, the same intonation, the same excitement. But honestly, that might not be that far away. Like that could be coming within the next couple months.
Yeah. So, there is so much coming out. You need to update your mental model so regularly. How can anybody that is not dedicated to working with AI products every day figure it out?
Follow me on LinkedIn. No, just kidding. There's a set of people, and I'm happy to share a list that we can publish later. There's a set of people that I follow that do a great job of providing various levels of updates on what's happening in AI. So, for example, they're the head of developer relations from Anthropic. I think his name is Alex. And one of the lead developer relations people at Google, I think his name is Logan. They post amazing tweet updates about underlying model capabilities. Whenever Anthropic or Gemini release something new, they'll say, here's the new model capability. Here's a 2-minute demo video of how to use it. Like those two people have saved me so much time and having to wade through model documentation updates. And then I found some, kind of domain specific creators who are really good at checking out the latest tools and breaking down which are good. So someone will do a teardown of like, hey, I wanted to create my own AI videos, and I tried HeyGen, I tried captions, I tried whatever, and here was my TLDR conclusion. And so I think, and you have to find someone whose voice resonates with you, whose style resonates with you, who you think has similar use cases to you. But there's no shortage of really, really smart people that are staying on the pulse of everything and turning it into digestible 10-minute videos once a week. And so that's what I do. And now I try for the things that are in my domain, I try to make those kinds of videos for other people.
And like for folks that have more of a horizontal role, like, director of product management at Google, in which your vertical domain might cover actually a bunch of different capabilities, and you think about how to be more effective. Like what is one product that you wish you were able to use back in your corporate role when you were dealing with a lot of the pressures of resource management, task assignment, personnel, that kind of thing?
I think in a corporate setting, the ability to regularly monitor information and provide automated status updates would have been incredibly valuable. So now we've built some of these workflows using our current tool, which, for example, they look at our spreadsheet of new customers every week and produce this report, or they look at all the new users signed up in a day and produce a report. And the larger and more complex your organization is, the more sort of digital exhaust there is. There's spreadsheets here and emails there, and they often contradict. And I think you could definitely, with some combination of modern reasoning models and an AI agent platform like ours, you could build a really effective research assistant that would basically say like, hey, tell me what the status of this project is. Look at, these emails, these Google groups, these spreadsheets, these Slack channels, and then highlight to me any risks in the project, highlight to me any areas of misalignment. And boy, would that have saved me a lot of time. Like, that doesn't preclude the need to go talk to the people on the ground who are actually working on it, but it can really point you in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, even just like having reports that were exceptions based. Like everything is operating within normal parameters. We don't need a steering committee this week. Would be great if we weren't operating in a world of us covering politics, resource fights, and all of the fiefdom stuff that comes. I'm not going to put this in the podcast.
And that I have no solution for, AI or otherwise. That is human nature.
Yeah. Well, Jacob, where can people learn more about Relay, find you on LinkedIn? I mean, the
best place to find me is LinkedIn. I post a few times a week and I try to keep it really practical. Here's something I'm building with AI. Here's something one of our customers is building with AI. And from there, you can just kind of get a sense of what AI might be able to do for you. And then we also have a YouTube channel where I record more detailed tutorial videos and do build with me sessions. I typically run them every Wednesday, and feel free to email me directly at jacob@relay.app if you'd like to join one of the sessions.
Amazing. And Jacob, what we might do is I might hit you up afterwards for that list of thought leaders that are helpful just kind of to stay abreast. We'll put that into the show notes. Jacob, it's been really great to talk to you. I think the future is humans and AIs working together to take out all the crappy work.
That's the dream. I think that's the dream, and I think it will very soon be the reality.
Yeah, and there was a whole thing about democratizing capital to build businesses. I actually think now just democratizing businesses is going to somewhat circumvent that problem. And so it's been really inspiring to talk to you as a former founder and a builder. I really appreciate the time. If you've got any questions that you want to send to Jacob, you can email us at stuck@213studios.com. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Rob. Great chatting with you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching Stuck. If something you heard today resonates with you, or if you have a question you'd like one of our experts, or even Jamal and I to help you with, send us an email or a voice note to stuck@213studios.com. And if you want to find more videos like this, check out our growing library of interviews and expert advice. And please, subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us and allows us to continue to bring you amazing content. You can also follow our journey and get weekly insights by subscribing to our Substack newsletter. And don't forget to follow us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Until next time, remember, it's never too late to make a change.